a moment to explain the test for germaneness and the underlying determination. In order for an amendment to be considered, it must be germane. Generally speaking, the following factors are considered. Is the proposed amendment relevant, appropriate, and in a natural or logical sequence to the subject matter of the original proposal? Does the proposed amendment introduce an independent question? Does the proposed amendment unreasonably or unduly expand the subject matter of the bill? Does the proposed amendment deal with a different topic or subject? Does the proposed amendment change the purpose, scope, or object of the original bill? In deciding a question of germaneness, the threshold determination must be that of the subject matter of the bill or amendment under consideration and its scope. In this instance, currently, the bill here deals with promoting housing access and choice and opportunity in smart growth areas. The amendment introduced aims to circumvent or modify Act 250. In determining whether an amendment is germane in relation to the earlier listed factors which are considered, I find the amendment introduced changes the purpose, scope, or object of the underlying bill, and as such, the proposed amendment is not found to be germane.
Thank you, Madam President.
And with that, we'll move on to third reading. The senator from Addison is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to state clearly that the committee was interested and is interested in some of the same goals that the senator from Franklin just raised in his amendment. The challenge for the committee is it's a large and difficult conversation to sort through all those details. So we wish to continue the conversation, but it did not seem like the appropriate bill at the right moment in order to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question now is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Windsor is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I would ask that the question be divided and that sections 10 and 11 of the bill be voted separately.
The question from the senator from Windsor, has asked that the question be divided without, the chair will briefly confer with the secretary. Thank you. The senator from Windsor has asked that the question be divided, but we've already called the question on whether the bill should be read for a third time. So the question as posed is not appropriate at this time. Therefore, the question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? The senator from Windsor is recognized.
Madam President, I withdraw my request.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? And if so, please unmute. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of S 101. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask to take up S48 for third reading.
We will now move to S48. We have on the calendar for third reading S48. Third reading was ordered on March 25th, 2021. Are there any amendments before third reading?
Yes, Madam President, I have one.
The senator from Rutland is recognized. Senator, you may go ahead.
I virtually rise today to offer my simple yet impactful amendment to S48. I want to start by saying that I have been a passionate supporter of the Nurse Compact Bill, and I appreciate the good work of my fellow committee members. We as a state face a tremendous need for registered nurses, and this is one of many vessels we can take to help fix this problem. For example, the Rutland Regional Medical Center has capacity for an additional 51 nurses immediately. My amendment is simple. It reads as follows. The Office of Professional Regulation shall not increase the license renewal fee for a Vermont single state nurse license to recover any revenue the Office of Professional Regulation loses or anticipates losing as a result of Vermont's adoption of the Nurse Licensure Compact. After our vote yesterday of S48, I heard from several nurses in my community who have real concerns about the passage of this bill due to the negative financial impact that they may experience. Last biennium, when this bill passed the Senate, many nurses were notified of a fee increase of their license renewal to offset the loss of revenue that the Office of Professional Regulation would experience by the Nurse Compact Bill potentially. I have been provided documentation from a longtime nurse which shows that the cost increase could be upwards of $100 every 2 years. This body is doing the right thing by passing S48. We have identified a problem, and here is one of the fixes. Identifying problems and offering solutions is why we all ran for public office. My motivations are to do what's right and just for all involved. But I cannot sit here and feel completely satisfied about our good work if it adds an expense to our current registered nurses, especially after what these heroes have done for our great state in the face of a global pandemic. We must ensure that they do not feel the financial pain of S48's passage. Our nurses deserve better than this and should not have to pay a licensure increase because the Office of Professional Regulation wants to recoup their losses. Please join me today by supporting this amendment to S48. It is a common sense measure that we can take to ensure our registered nurses aren't penalized in their bank accounts. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. The first question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the senator from Rutland? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Windham is recognized.
No, I'm just pointing out Senator from Addison has her hand up.
The senator from Addison is recognized. And I also see the senator from Windham, so we will get to everyone, I promise.
And thank you for the assistance from the senator from Windham. I am reporting from the Senate, your Health and Welfare Committee. We considered this amendment, and the majority of members of the committee do not support the amendment. I would like to, both the Senate Health and Welfare Committee and the Senate Finance Committee received testimony on this issue from the director of the Office of Professional Regulation. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
My internet. Okay, my internet thing. I got the notice about my internet. Okay, we received extensive testimony from the director of the Office of Professional Regulation about this issue, and she did report that there is a potential for a fee increase in 23 or FY23 or FY24. However, the office would work to mitigate the fee increase as much as possible by reducing expenses in the office, and is committed to working with the General Assembly in their budget request for FY23 and FY24 to find alternative alternative solutions to a fee increase. I will remind the body that both the Senate Health and Welfare and the Senate Finance Committee and also the Senate Appropriations Committee unanimously this bill as it came out of the Health and Welfare Committee. And we don't feel that the Health and Welfare Committee at least does not feel that it is necessary. This amendment is necessary as we will have opportunities in our budget discussion for FY23 and FY24 to address this issue if necessary. Thank you, Madam President.
The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. As chair of Senate Government Operations that oversees the Office of Professional Regulation, I would suggest that this amendment not be passed and that when we're dealing with the OPR bill, we look at the fees. And I would remind us that the fees that are collected by the profession are used to regulate the profession and do disciplinary actions, and fees go up and down regularly as more or fewer or more cases are brought forth. And so it is what supports their budget. And I would suggest that we look at this a little more closely when we deal with the OPR bill. Thank you.
The question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as moved by the senator from Rutland? Are you ready for the question? So please unmute. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The nays appear to have it. The nays do have it, and you have not amended the bill as recommended by the senator from Rutland. The question now is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? We will first do third reading.
H48, an act relating to Vermont's adoption of the Interstate Nurse Licensure Compact.
Now the question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? So please unmute. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've passed S48. We'll now move to H81. We have on the calendar for third reading, H81. Third reading was ordered on March 25th, 2021. Are there any amendments before third reading? Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H81, an act relating to statewide public school employee health benefits.
The question now is, shall the bill pass in concurrence? Are you ready for the question?
Roll call.
I hear a roll call from the senator from Rutland. I also see that the senator from Washington, his hand's raised. The senator, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I just wanted to remind us that this bill is making adjustments to an existing framework for healthcare benefit bargaining for all school employees. It's not a bill about the problem of increasing healthcare costs, which I do believe is a problem and do think is worthy of legislation. This just isn't it. Also, there was a question during second reading on the fiscal note for this bill, which is a good question and something I likely should have mentioned in my report. But upon rereading the fiscal note, it was clear to me why I didn't include it, because it doesn't really provide a clear picture of what the fiscal impact is. You know, the fiscal note in the summary states that the revenue needs and healthcare premiums will depend on the bargaining decisions made in a period. That joint fiscal could have almost left it at that, because it is difficult, if not impossible, to predict the cost implications of this bill, because it's about an agreement that won't be completed for 8 months, and it won't take effect until January of 2023. So that's 20 months from now. So I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to reference Donald Rumsfeld and the known and unknown knowns, because that's the situation we're dealing with here. We know that we are dealing with known unknowns. With that said, And to be fair to those concerned with the potential costs of these known unknowns, the fiscal note did talk about and did say that this may increase the state's costs due to increase in healthcare costs borne by the state. For example, they give an example of the fiscal note lays out how a bargained agreement around changes to the out-of-pocket expenses could cost the state almost $1 million more per year. But again, we just don't know what the cost implications will be, but we do know that it will improve the process and the structure with which we have and which will decide the healthcare benefits for all our school employees. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Rutland has requested a roll call vote. Are you ready for the question? And again, the question is, shall the bill pass? The secretary is kindly asked to call the roll.
Senator Ballant.
Yes.
Senator Baruth.
Yes.
Senator Benning.
No.
Senator Bray.
Senators are kindly asked to unmute.
Senator Brock.
No.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Aye.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collimore.
No.
Senator Cummings. Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Hooker.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
No.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald.
Yes.
Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormack.
Yes.
Senator Nitka.
Yes.
Senator Parent.
No.
Senator Pearson.
Yes.
Senator Perschlick.
Yes.
Senator Polina.
Yes.
Senator Rahm.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Sirotkin.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Terenzini. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Do you want to go Bray again?
Senator Bray. Senator Bray.
Senator, you're unmuted, or you're muted, excuse me. Senator Bray, kindly unmute.
I think we.
Senator Bray. Senator Cummings. Senator Terenzini.
Please listen to the results of your vote. The yeas 22, the nays 5, and you've passed H81. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask that we take up S10.
We have on the calendar for action S10, introduced on January 12th, 2021. It was referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as appears on pages 927, to 934 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S10, an act relating to extending certain unemployment insurance provisions related to COVID-19.
The chair recognizes the senator from Chittenden, Senator Sorotkin, for the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe we have a substitute amendment to offer.
Senator, are you moving to have the substitute report adopted or introduced, rather?
Yes.
Without objection, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I need to start off somewhat unusually by thanking our legislative counsel, Damian Leonard, and the Department of Labor for the countless and inordinate hours and inordinate amount of time they gave to our committee in addressing this challenging issue wherein we've attempted to help both our business community and workers who have been laid off through no fault of their own. Our committee has been dealing with this issue since last September, and we must have had at least 25 hearings on the subject. And these folks have put in yeoman's time and work in supporting us and appearing before the committee. I would also like to start off on a personal note. Some of you may recall in the 2014 session, I was sworn in mid-session as I was appointed to my first term. I was understandably a bit nervous and caught by surprise, though I don't know why I was surprised, by being asked by a reporter after the session adjourned. He came up to me and asked me after the ceremony what I wanted to work on now that I was a senator. While I probably stuttered a bit, I quickly said I would like to address the issue of income inequality. I mention this to you now because I feel the bill we are working on today, S10, is a small part of that challenge that I think we all acknowledge we've been losing ground on. It is well documented that we have a problem with growing wage stagnation over the last 10 to 20 years, and the gap between the haves and the have-nots has only expanded. The pandemic has only made the problem worse. And as you'll hear from me and others on my committee, it has been especially hard on women who have disproportionately lost their jobs and livelihood due to COVID. Madam President, S10 is definitely a COVID relief bill, both for businesses and for workers. And we tried hard to strike the proper balance of tax.
Excuse me, Senator. Sorry. I'm going to kindly ask anyone who's not speaking to mute themselves, just so we have a clarity in the feed. Thanks. Senator, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, S10 is definitely a COVID relief bill, both for businesses and for workers. And we tried hard to strike the proper balance of tax relief for business and additional help for unemployed workers. We did both in our bill, so what we feel we have before you is a win-win compromise, not one where only one side gets assistance or relief and the other does not. Madam President, S10 comes to you in two distinct parts. The first part is essentially a continuation of the work we did last spring by extending the sunset on last year's law beyond its present March 31st sunset date to whenever the COVID state of emergency is lifted and several weeks beyond to keep within the UI quarterly reporting system. However, it is important for us to refresh our memories on what we did last May and why it should be evident we need to extend the sunset. Madam President, there's a basic premise in unemployment law where if you're laid off from your job through no fault of your own, you are eligible for benefits. Your benefit levels depend upon your previous wages and range from about $72 a week at the low end for benefits to a maximum of $531 as the capped level of benefits. The average weekly benefit in the state of Vermont is $386 per week. If you are below the max, you usually get about 57% of your weekly pay replaced. And if you're at the max, you are getting an even lower percentage of wage replacement. If you quit your job without good cause attributable to the employer, which might be a situation such as the employer providing an unsafe work environment, you generally get no benefits. But last year with COVID, we made several exceptions, such as if you were sick or had to quarantine due to COVID, or had to care for someone with COVID, or you had a high risk of contraction, or you had to provide childcare, you can qualify for benefits even though you quit. Essentially, you had good cause for quitting. Employers also got special relief last year in the law that is scheduled to expire on March 31st. The insurance premiums they paid into the UI Trust Fund, which is designed to help workers laid off from avoiding impoverishment and to help stimulate the economy, are generally experience rated, which means that the more layoffs you have, the greater your premium. The premium is presently at 0.4% of the first $14,100 in wages per year per employee. That equates to $56 a year on each employee you have, and that applies for about half of our businesses in the state. It goes up to 5.4%, with 20 different rate percentages in between, depending upon an individual business's experience rating. What we did last year is to make sure that any layoffs that were related to COVID, such as being forced to close down, either partially or fully, would not be charged against the business's experience rated. So what we're doing in the first part of the bill is in response to the COVID pandemic and the state of emergency lasting far longer than anyone expected. We're extending the sunset from March 31st to the end of the quarter following when the executive order is lifted. The second part of the bill is actually relatively short and relates to equity and fairness and the ability to help both employees and employers as we finally turn the corner. Before I get into the substance of the second part of the bill, which now includes simply one tax benefit for the employer and one benefit enhancement for workers, let me talk to you a bit about the UI program and its insurance trust fund. Madam President, the federal state unemployment insurance system assists most people who have lost their jobs by temporarily replacing part of their wages while they look for work. It was created with the New Deal in 1935 and as a form of social insurance in which taxes collected from employers are paid into the system on behalf of working people to provide them with income support if they lose their job. The system also helps sustain consumer demand during economic downturns by providing a continuing stream of dollars for family to spend. Madam President, can I quote from three of our nation leaders on the importance of the UI system to the United States?
Without objection.
This was a quote from the New Deal. This law, too, represents a cornerstone in a structure which is being built but is by no means complete. It is a structure intended to lessen the force of possible future depressions. It will act as a protection to future administrations against the necessity of going deeply into debt to furnish relief to the needy. The law will flatten out the peaks and valleys of deflation and of inflation. It is, in short, a law that will take care of human needs and at the same time provide the United States an economic structure of vastly greater soundness. If the Senate and the House of Representatives in this long and arduous session has done nothing more than pass this bill, the session would be regarded as historic for all time. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, August 14, 1935. Second, the Temporary Extended Unemployment Compensation Act of 1961, which I have just signed into law, is the first major bill proposed by this administration to deal with the present recession, which was passed to Congress. This TEUCA Act will add almost $1 billion to the nation's purchasing power in the next 15 months. These dollars will be hardworking dollars. They will be spent almost immediately for food, for shelter, for bare necessities. These dollars will flow into our stores, into our factories, onto our farms. President John F. Kennedy, March 21st, 1961. Third, and for the fellow Americans who have been laid off through no fault of our own, unemployment insurance is often the only source of income they have to support their families while they look for a new job. So when Eric was out of work, it's a lot harder to look for work if you can't put gas in the gas tank, if you're worried about whether there's food on the table for your kid. If mom isn't making the rent and paying her phone bill, it's a lot harder for her to follow up with a potential employer. Unemployment insurance provides that extra bit of security so that losing your livelihood doesn't mean you lose everything that you've worked so hard to build. And that's true whether you've been out of work for 1 month or 6 months. President Barack Obama, January 13th, 2014. So, Madam President, what is the second part of S10 about? Plain and simple, it is in large part a debate about money and where the projected surplus in the fund should go. Who should get the help? Employers, employees, or both? And to what degree? Actually, it's a pretty nice problem to have, to be able to help both businesses and workers. Nevertheless, I feel our committee has been whipsawed just a touch under the guise of no good deed goes unpunished. Let me explain. About a decade ago in this chamber, we had a battle royale labeled as the grand bargain between labor and business over restructuring the UI trust fund, which many of you recall. It was widely acknowledged at that point that the trust fund was in serious trouble. And it was also widely acknowledged that the primary reason it was in trouble was we had not adjusted employer tax rates to keep up for inflation. Rates for many, many years, most specifically the taxable wage base, which I alluded to before, of taxing the first $14,100, have been stuck at $8,000 for many, many years. Even though benefits were going up with inflation, the contributions paid into the fund were not going up. While employers agreed that they had a pretty good ride and agreed their taxes could be raised, they also sought many millions of dollars out of incomparable benefit cuts to unemployed workers. In the end, the legislature made permanent cuts to benefits for seasonal workers, froze the maximum benefit for many years, instituted a 1-week waiting period for benefits, and disqualified people for weeks when they had accrued vacation and sick pay. There is absolutely no question that laid-off workers acutely shared in the pain to bring the fund back to solvency during the Great Recession. And those of us that were here know that. And it worked. The fund came back with a fury, such that prior to the pandemic, we had what was considered the healthiest trust fund in the country at about $500 million. And now DOL is projecting it will go to $1 billion in the next decade. Excuse me. So last year, the other body brought us a suggestion to lower employer taxes by $36 million to soften the projected tax increase that the statutory formula would otherwise require. That proposal sounded reasonable to our committee, but it was premature, as the decision on that proposal was not needed until this May, when we would have more information and we would have been in session for 5 months. I made a personal commitment to revisit that proposal this year, and we kept that promise in this bill. And in fact, we do in this bill twice as much in tax relief than what we postponed action on last year. With the tax-free proposed in this amendment for FY22, we are reducing employers' tax bills next year by $66 million, close to twice what the House proposed in 2020. It is important to note that I said last September, and I've been saying it in virtually every committee since, that consistent with the so-called grand bargain of 2010, where workers shared in the pain through severe benefit cuts, they should also share in the gain when we find our trust fund reserves are in a position to be lowered by helping with their benefits. So the one benefit we are now proposing is a benefit for families that have dependents at home, a flat $50 a week if a laid-off worker has one child or more living with them. It sunsets in 5 years, and the total cost over that period is $38 million. So we are proposing benefit enhancements of $38 million over 5 years and a tax reduction immediately in the first year of $66 million. Let me pause for a moment and cite some of the reasons given to our committee and why we landed on the dependent benefit to target as the benefit enhancement. Following the Great Recession in 2008, the Obama administration encouraged states to adopt a variety of enhancements to the UI systems, including a push to assist families by providing a dependent benefit for UI recipients with household dependents. These additional benefits were an acknowledgement that families face additional hardships when a parent or parents are out on unemployment. A nationwide survey conducted during that time found that 84% of women with children and 77% of men reported increases in family stress as a result of unemployment. 2/3 of the women polled said they cut spending on their children, food, and medical care while unemployed. Currently, there are 13 states that provide for dependent allowances. Many of these states, and 3 in New England, many of these states have expansive definition of dependents, which would qualify a person to receive an enhanced benefit, including spouses, parents over 65, disabled parents, older children unable to work, and brothers or sisters. The proposal before you is limited to parents with children under the age of 18, which would make us one of the more restrictive benefits in the country. States also range in their maximum dependent benefits amounts, with Pennsylvania on the low end of $8 a week to Massachusetts at $397, depending on the number of dependents. Again, S10's benefit, while helpful, would be modest in comparison to some states at $50 a week, no matter the number of dependent children 18. The need for a dependent benefit is particularly acute, given that at the height of the COVID-19 unemployment, 74% of UI recipients in the state of Vermont were women, compared to 50% as the national average. We were first or last in the nation by a significant amount in this regard. According to a joint fiscal report on the topic, women are suffering disproportionate effect, in part because they are often employed in jobs not amenable to working from home, such as the hard-hit hospitality sector, because they are caring for children with shifting school schedules or older people at risk of suffering from COVID-19. 3 New England states, as I said, Maine, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts currently have a dependent allowance, and Maine is currently considering an expansion of their benefit. A dependent benefit would particularly help women support themselves through this pandemic economic turmoil in the face of systemic gender biases that have caused women, and particularly women of color, to earn less and have jobs concentrated in the service and care sectors, which are often considered essential but poorly paid. Madam President, illuminating the impacts of COVID-19 economic impacts on women, the Vermont Commission on Women testified that the already existing disproportionate burden of unpaid caregiving, education, and household labor borne by women has been increased during the pandemic, and the losses of women in the workforce are undoing decades of progress. The Commission on Women also found that nationally, women are leaving the workforce at 4 times the rate of men. Jobless losses in the United States are overwhelmingly endured by women of color, particularly. Women reduced their working hours by 4 to 5 times as much as men when the pandemic hit, and working mothers have dropped their time at work by 50% more than working fathers. The Commission concluded their remarks by finding policy decisions made in response to the COVID-19 pandemic provide an opportunity to recognize that the unemployment situation for women in Vermont is in crisis, and the uneven impact on working mothers demands attention. Applying an equity lens to decisions about distributions of resources, including unemployment benefits and accompanying dependent benefits, provides an opportunity to target remedies in ways that recognize the disparate impact of the pandemic. Finally, Madam President, dependent benefits can also have important impacts on the health and well-being of children. In support of adding $50 a week dependent benefits, Voices for Vermont Children testified, research shows that children who live in poverty have worse outcomes than their more affluent peers in terms of physical and mental health, cognitive development, school achievement, and emotional well-being. They score lower on academic tests, complete fewer years of education, work less, and earn less than others. But it has been shown that even small increases in family income can improve outcomes.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
I'm not done.
Okay.
Before I move to a section-by-section analysis of the bill, I want to address some of the concerns we have heard around the bill that I now think we've fixed. I personally and sincerely thank my seatmate from both of my committees, Senator Brock. We had many evenings of long phone conversations and negotiations, and he was nothing less than fair, honest, and a true gentleman throughout. While we didn't quite get to the consensus I think we honestly both wanted, we did come very close. Nevertheless, you will see his fingerprints on our amendments' attempts to address some of the concerns that were out there. First of all, we were questioned about not giving true rate relief to businesses. As the way the formula works, there was a chance they may have to pay some of that relief back in future years. We fixed that by giving the commissioner the authority to ensure that it is true rate relief. Secondly, there was a complaint that we were giving benefits at a time when the feds had proposed the $300 supplement. We did that for 2 months in our original bill, earlier than when the $300 end. But now we fix this to start it at the same time that $300 ends. Third, Senator Brock and I share the common concern that it needs to be more thorough review of the trust fund balance, and as we both fear is unnecessarily keeping money in the bank as opposed to working to help employers and employees and the economy. You'll see in the bill a study continue our work on this topic on adjusting the trust fund after a report back in November. Finally, there is concern among some folks that folks on unemployment don't want to work, and that UI incentivizes them not to work. Well, I strongly disagree with that for the vast majority of those who have lost their work through no fault of their own. I do want to say that the commissioner told us that with COVID subsiding, the work search requirements are now going to be reinstituted shortly, and the governor confirmed that just last Wednesday. And I also want to correct a misconception that those on unemployment can turn down a job without serious risk to their unemployment benefit. In fact, the reverse is true. If a claimant is found or a beneficiary is found to have turned down a suitable job, be it with a former employer or a potential new employer, they can lose their benefits entirely. That is the law. So with that, Madam President, I would like to turn to the section-by-section analysis of the bill, if I may.
You may.
Thank you. Section 1, 21 VSA 1325 deals with employers' experience rating records. It clarifies that experience rating relief for COVID-related quits applies to UI benefits paid in 2020. It further amends for COVID-related layoffs to make experience rating relief the default for benefits paid in 2020 so that an employer does not have to apply for rating relief. The commissioner may withhold relief if the commissioner determines that the layoff was for a non-COVID related reason, if the employer resumed operations without offering to rehire employees and did not have good cause to do so. And it requires the DOL to investigate allegations or information indicating that an employer may not be entitled to that relief. Section 2 deals with relief from COVID-19 related to unemployment benefit charges for calendar year 2021. It provides experience rating relief for benefits paid in 2021 in relation to COVID-related quit or COVID-related layoff. To qualify for relief, an employer must rehire or offer to rehire within 30 days after the reason employees quit no longer exists, or layoff. Having good cause for not rehiring or offering to rehire, and the commissioner will determine what is good cause. The commissioner is required to adopt procedures and applications to begin the processing applications for relief prior to June 1st, 2021. Commissioner is required to report to the committees of jurisdiction regarding these proposed procedures and applications by April 15, 2021. The commissioner is required to commence outreach to employers and employees regarding the requirements for experience rating by April 15th, 2021. And the committee's desire in that respect is to try and get people back to work with their previous employers if the job is available and the offer of rehire is required. Section 3 extends the sunset for COVID-related experience rating relief and provisions allowing individuals to receive UI benefits after quitting for COVID-related reasons until either the first day of the calendar quarter after the state of emergency ends, or if the state of emergency ends in the last 30 days of a quarter, the first day of the second calendar quarter after the state of emergency end. This was asked for by the Department of Labor for administrative convenience reasons. Section 4 is a technical correction. It temporarily allows the state to trigger a new UI extended benefit period without waiting 13 weeks after the end of the last extended benefit period. It's a technical fix asked for by the department and allowed for by the federal government on December 27th, 2020. Section 5 begins the second half of the bill, amending weekly benefits to add the $50 per week benefit for claimants with one or more dependents under the age of 18. Section is continued. We put a governor in there that if the department feels that the UI trust fund in December may go below $90 million, the new benefit or the tax increases, I'll get to that, will be put on pause. The new dependent benefit is effective when the $300 weekly federal supplement ends, which is currently expected to end on 9/6/21. Section 6 repeals the dependent effective a 5 years subsequent to its starting. As I said, it has a 5-year sunset. Section 7, the UI rate schedule, this is a tax freeze, freezes UI contribution rates at Schedule 1, which is the lower rate for the period of July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. It would otherwise go to the highest rate of Schedule 5. Again, it's contingent on that governor of $90 million being projected to be in the fund on December 15th, 2021. Section 8, this is one of the changes we made in our original bill to make sure that the rate relief of $66 million is true rate relief. Section 9 sets the UI base of taxable wage base for 22 and 23. It will remain at $14,100 next year, as opposed to going up to, I believe it was scheduled to go up to $14,600. This is the report in Section 10. Our committee will be very busy next year. We've been told that an eyeball look at the trust fund and outgoing benefits requires the trust fund to have about $500 or $600 million in it in the next decade. We're projected to be at $1 billion. So there's more money in the fund available for both employers to have their taxes reduced and potentially have employees see improved benefits. But that's what we're going to be studying. And quite frankly, it's a continuation of this work. We're doing a minor piece here, but the bigger work is yet to come. Section 11 is the effective date. We heard from many witnesses from the Department of Labor, Associated Industries of Vermont, the Office of Legislative Counsel, the Chamber of Commerce, the Building and Construction Trade Council, Working Vermont, the Regional Development Corporations, the Vermont Retail Grocers Association, the Association of Wedding Professionals, Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility, Lake Champlain Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Vermont Commission on Women, Voices Vermont Children, an individual, Jocelyn Emelo, a beneficiary, Vermont Insurance Agents Association, and Vermont Legal Aid. And our vote was 4-1 to approve this substitute amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs? Are you ready for the question? So please unmute.
Roll call.
The senator from Caledonia has requested a roll call vote. Are you ready for the question? Senator from Addison is recognized, and I see other hands, and I will recognize those hands in due course.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to verify that I can be heard and as well as hear you folks, because I was unable to participate in an earlier roll call.
Yes, Senator. And I also wanted to note that for those listening and all senators, that the substitute report was distributed via email and is on the Senate overview page. The senator from Caledonia, Senator Kitchell, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President.
Oops, Senator, you are muted. There you go. Senator?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I apologize. My mute control didn't seem to want to work. I have spent a lot of time thinking about this bill, and it weighs heavily because we get into this world of yes or no, or black or white. If you vote one way, you're for business. If you vote another way, you're for workers or you're against workers. I have made it clear that I've been very concerned about these changes at this particular time. We're talking about how we would use and addressing a projected surplus. Right now, the fund is at 214 million. We started out before the pandemic at over 500 million. I'm not suggesting that there isn't an opportunity or a time to look at the benefit structure, to look at whether the tax rate is too aggressive. I certainly appreciate all the comments about the percentage of women who are beneficiaries in this particular recession as compared to the last. I don't dispute, obviously we know money is important to families and well-being. I feel very pained by that when I look at the pitiful allowance we pay families to support their children under our Reach Up program. I do have a great deal of apprehension about making these changes when we're talking about projections. It brings home that uneasiness of when we were talking about amount of contributions to our pension funds and assuming that the amount of investment return would more than offset the underpayment of the ARC. It's with all that I've weighed out, and I would want to give Vermont businesses the benefit of a rate freeze so that they would not experience the rate shock that would otherwise occur. On the other hand, I recognize the financial plight of families in this pandemic. And right now, we still are in a declared state of emergency. There is another option here, which for me would be the preferential route. And that would be rather than providing additional assistance to families or to the beneficiaries through the UI structure, which is funded by Vermont employers. And it has been noted that ultimately is funded by Vermont workers because their wages are influenced by what the tax the employer has to pay. There is another option here, and that would be to use the federal money that's coming in under the American Rescue Plan to do like we did last spring with payment of assistance to beneficiaries using that funding mechanism. I realize that that is not the direction, and I appreciate the very hard work of the committee with what they're proposing today, but I cannot, in all comfort, feel that I want to be making decisions regarding a projected surplus at a time when the fund is at 214 million. We did not entertain it before the pandemic when it was in a much healthier state. And so for me, it's a matter of timing, the amount of thought that needs to go into this, and do it in an environment that is not while we're in a state of emergency and still really not out of the economic woods as it relates to the economic impact. So I would want to respond on both sides, but I do not see this as a mechanism to do it. Thank you, Madam President.
Question is, how the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. The senator from Franklin is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to recognize the hard work of the senator from Chittenden, the chair of the Economic Development Committee. I have spent many long nights in the past 2 weeks discussing with him all the various implications of this bill and trying to make them better. And I think we have made them better. I think that there are a number of things that he's mentioned in his testimony today that have made the bill better than it was and added some additional protections. At the same time, I can't support the bill. And I believe the comments of the senior senator from Caledonia go directly to some of the issues involved. We have a situation right now in which we have a mechanism by which we calculate what the trust fund balance should be. And you have to recognize the purpose of the trust fund balance is to ensure that we have sufficient money to pay out the claims that we have. The balance is going to go up exponentially over the next 10 years because the formula is based on the highest rate or the highest amount of benefits paid during the previous 10 years. And we now have the result in 2020 of a 100-year pandemic. That will distort significantly the amount of money being paid out. Now, part of the argument that we've heard is that employers are being benefited, that by lowering the rate that the formula would automatically create for the next year, it gives a windfall to employers by giving them more time to get business back to normal so that they can make the contributions that need to be made. And that's true. But at the same time, we have to understand that it is not a real benefit. It is simply a deferral. It is simply, for all intents and purposes, a loan or a mortgage because it has to be paid back over the 10-year period if that formula continues as it is. And if we don't make assumptions regarding changes that will somehow lower the amount that we have to pay in, although I think we probably will. What that means in a nutshell is that it's a loan, it's not a gift, and it's not a benefit to employers. Now, this particular bill in this iteration makes a change, and it provides for a return to employers of $66.5 billion, which is the 1 year deferral that would occur based on the contents of this bill. But again, that's not a benefit. The deferral is a benefit, but the money is not. It's smoke and mirrors from that standpoint. Think, for example, if you go to the ATM and you put $100, if you take it out of the ATM and you put it in your wallet, and you put the wallet in your pocket, and you drop the wallet as you're leaving the ATM. A good Samaritan comes along and finds your wallet, and a week later returns your wallet with the $100 intact inside of it. Are you $100 richer than you were a week ago? Have you gotten a benefit? No. Basically, what you've done is you've gotten back what essentially is a loss. And that's all that's happening here. Employers are not getting a real benefit. On the other hand, as we pay money out to dependents, that money is gone. That money is never going to be recovered. It's money that's lost out of the trust fund. And that's where it's coming from, is out of the trust fund. It may be that at some point we decide that that's the appropriate thing to do. I'm glad that the bill, for example, was modified since it was originally introduced, because the way it was before, we would get a federal benefit, they would get this benefit on top of it, and then there was a 20% benefit for others, for employees themselves for a 1 year period. And that would have resulted in anyone earning less than $24 an hour earning more by not working than they did by working. And I'm happy to say that in our discussions and with the work of the chair of Senate Economic Development, we fixed that. And the new benefit, the dependent benefit, does not come into play until after those federal benefits go away, which is the right thing to do. But I am concerned that we took very little testimony about this additional dependent benefit until the bill had passed out of committee. We first heard about the details of this $5, which would have been initially a permanent benefit, the day before and without testimony. We've had some subsequent testimony, but we don't normally act by having testimony on something that we've already passed before it gets to the floor. And I'm concerned that we've not been thorough in our due diligence. As we talk about unemployment benefits and the impact on Vermont employers, I think it's interesting to note that Vermont has the highest, not the second highest, not the 10th highest, but the highest rate in the nation in terms of our charges for unemployment compensation. For calendar year 2020, based on estimated employer contribution rates, and when you figure out what the rate is to compare on a state-by-state basis, you have to look not at the rate, but you have to look at the taxable wage base and then how the rate applies to it. And then from that, you can apply to what that rate is for total wages. And we're first in the nation, and that's according to the U.S. Department of Labor's Employment and Training Administration. And this bill makes it worse. It increases it. The money that may be paid back to employers based on the additional contributions that they would make under this formula, I will add, is they're paying back their own money with the assumption inherent that the top target for the fund in 10 years will change and be lower, and that's where the money will come from to pay the employers back. And again, that's smoke and mirrors. It's not real money, and it's not a real savings. We've heard from a profusion of employers, and with the exception of one employer group, virtually every employer group in the state who has responded after this bill was put out has raised considerable concern about the effect of it, and the effect both in terms of total cost and also on our economic recovery, because this will wind up certainly over a longer term after this first year of rate one. This will result in more costs and increased money being taken out of the fund and more pressure on the fund that exists right now. We also were given a very strong and stern warning by the department that the system that we're using right now, and we know, and I think all of you know about the glitches that we've had in paying employee benefits during this pandemic. Our system is elderly. It's fragile. It's on its last legs. And we were warned by the commissioner repeatedly that imposing these conditions, because the money has to be paid out of the fund, has to be paid in accordance with the very complex rules that are associated with the federal requirements for unemployment, that we run a very significant risk of serious damage and of system failure. That was made clear to us, and the committee made the decision that, well, they'll figure out how to do it because we're smart and we're in the 21st century. Well, maybe we will. I hope we will. But I'm concerned that we will not with this bill as it exists right now by adding the benefit in the way that it is calculated and the way that it is planned. And on that basis, I suggest that this is not something that's wise for us to do. I think it's unbalanced. I think that we are adding now a benefit when we put it in for 5 years. A benefit for the COVID emergency, I absolutely agree with. I agree that we can do and should do what we can to help people who are unemployed in a pandemic and who aren't able to get back to work. The senator from Caledonia's concept of using one-time federal money to do that, to me, makes much more sense than using a trust fund balance to do it, and also to limit it to the period of the pandemic so that we take the time to look at what the right size of our benefit structure ought to be, also taking into account what our costs are, and particularly how, as it is with the benefits that we are paying, we're a national outlier. I strongly recommend that we reject this amendment. Thank you, Madam President.
The senator from Orange, Senator McDonald, is recognized.
May I interrogate the reporter of the bill?
You may.
Could the Senate, the chair of the committee, tell us if there's any analysis been done on how the decision on where to send these funds, how it plays out on how much money is likely to be spent on the local economy when the lower end, the employees get the benefits or the employers get the benefits? How much, which is the best for the local economy?
I don't think we took any testimony on that, but I think it's pretty well known that if you're living at low income wages or subsistence wages, those dollars get put right back into the economy. And there have been many studies on that. I guess it's not as clear if somebody who has large profits or wages, whether they get, whether they save the money or put it back into the economy. If I may, Madam President, I'd like to say, just to correct the record here, is that the proposal that was brought to us by the administration, right now, as I said, we're suggesting spending $66 million on tax relief and $38 million on benefits for a total of $104 million. The administration's proposal was to spend $127 million, all for the benefit of tax relief. They came in and they pushed that. The governor put it in his budget address. The second thing I'd like to say is that, as I said in my remarks, we have a governor in this bill, not a governor in the State House, but a check on whether these benefits or the tax relief goes through by the Department of Labor making an estimate that we have sufficient funds to keep the trust fund balanced and pay out benefits in the next calendar year of $90 million. So none of these things go through, and I think they're saying that we're very safe with that number. So I think there is a check. I share the concern of the senator from Caledonia, but there comes a time when we're just sitting on too much money. And, you know, whether it's my committee's idea to help both businesses and workers, or it's the governor's idea to exclusively help business, the money doesn't need to be sitting in a fund earning 1 or 2%. And when you have a governor in there that checks that these ideas won't go forward if the fund is looking like it's not going to be able to meet its obligations, and it's a healthy check, then I don't know why we wouldn't go forward in this time and help both sides. And finally, it's interesting because the argument has been made over and over again that the tax relief of $66 million would not really be seen in to employers. Just so you know, I had a conversation with an employer in Chittenden County who would be facing a $42,000 increase in his tax bill starting next July. And if this bill doesn't go forward, he's going to pay $42,000 more. The argument is, well, I save that money this year, but in the next 10 years, they'll claw it back. We have specifically addressed that issue in this bill. If you read the section on protecting long-term rate relief, it gives the commissioner total discretion to make sure that $66 million is real. So we've tried in every which way to meet these concerns. And it almost sounds like that they want the $66 million to be paid for them a third time. We've protected that tax relief. And the business community was all on board in terms of supporting this bill if it just included tax relief for them. And they had no concern about the health of the trust fund. In fact, they were willing to take $127 million out of the trust fund. But now that we suggested sharing some of this money, all of a sudden the dynamic has changed. And again, I share Senator Kitchell's concern, but I think we have addressed it. And we have spent a lot of time dealing with this issue back and forth. And if people want to look and talk to the commissioner as to whether we haven't taken those protections, I wish they would do that. But we've tried to address both the employer's concern and the health of the trust fund concern with specific amendments that are being brought forth today.
Madam President, I'm grateful for the answer, and what I heard to my question was that it's generally agreed that when workers who are at the bottom of the scale and who receive unemployment benefits, they're much more likely to spend the money locally, which would be appropriate in a bill which was passed at the federal level as a stimulus bill for our economy. Madam President, I was at a meeting last night with many senators in which we had a long discussion about school lunches and a shorter discussion about unemployment benefits. And it occurred to me that everybody in that meeting, almost every one of them had eaten school lunches in their lifetimes, but very few of them had ever been unemployed. In the last 2 years, if I had to ask what I have learned differently as a senator, it has been as a result of the workshops that we had about implied biases and how implied biases that we have influence our thinking and our behavior and our treatment of others. It struck me during this discussion that we talked about the 70% of women, that 70% of the women were the ones who were unemployed, receiving benefits. And the terms that we used in that was that the women are the beneficiaries of the unemployment fund. Women are the lowest paid, they're the first to go and get laid off. The statistics out on COVID is that food and hospitality industry people are more likely to be ill. And that group is being referred to as beneficiaries in our decision about money, whether it goes to the employers or the employees when it is sent for economic recovery relief. The reason that women are at home is because of this state's wise and thoughtful policies about how to avoid becoming ill and catch COVID and cause great damage. But we have been, for most of the COVID period, the state that has avoided cases. And this did not happen by accident. This happened because we closed down businesses that sent women home. They were the ones that went home, and they took care of kids. They did the teaching, and they did it without pay except for unemployment insurance. They didn't volunteer to go home. They were sent home as the folks who have the jobs that we pay the least. And today we're referring to them as the beneficiaries. The implied bias is playing a big role, in my opinion, on how we are resolving the problem. How do we view that part of our workforce that gets sent home in hard times to pick up double duty without getting paid and refer to them as beneficiaries? I, like the senators here, always try to accommodate the other side in our discussions and debates. And we come from different places, but when our implied biases treat one group differently, and we use words like lazy, not interested in work, content to sit home and collect. If that's true, how come we have the lowest unemployment rates in the United States of America over the last 10 years? What is there about Vermonters that stands out, that they go to work, they don't shirk work, they seek it when it's available, and yet we refer to the folks that are unemployed at a lower rate than they are in the other 49 states, the last several decades, are lazy and shirkers. Compared to what? Or is it that anyone who is unemployed for just by being unemployed triggers our implied biases, that somehow they're not as worthy as those of us who didn't get sent home during a pandemic? They're not as worthy as those of us who didn't get laid off first after a pandemic. So that bothers me, and that's a result of our workshops. The money that's in the unemployment fund, whose money is that? Whose money is that? We've heard it referred to as being one group's money and not the other group's money. That money is there to deal with unemployment issues and to do it in a fair and equitable manner, and to put aside our implied biases. It's the money of the unemployed, just as much as anyone can say it's the money of the employers. That's what the money is there for. And if we start out looking at that money as belonging to one group and not the other, what sort of results and how we're going to spend it depends on our bias on whose money that is. This hasn't been easy, and I think we in this Senate are lucky enough not to have experienced the problems faced by those that are unemployed not through their own cause, as the parties have worked hard together to try and reach this resolution. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. The senator from Bennington, Senator Campion, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. May I inquire of the presenter of the amendment?
You may.
Madam President, I'm trying to understand what would happen if this bill were not to pass today. I believe you mentioned that you had a conversation with a business owner in your county that would end up paying significantly if this bill were not to pass. Can you say something, tell me a little bit more about the implications? In other words, is this, what businesses, all businesses would have this negative impact on?
Yes. Thank you very much for that question, because I think it goes to the heart of the relief we're trying to achieve for businesses. The amount of taxes you pay in any given year into the unemployment trust fund is dependent upon a rate schedule that ranges from 1 to 5, depending upon the past history of the economy, the health of the fund, and your experience rating. And right now, in this year, employers are paying at the lowest rate of 5 rate categories. Based upon the statute, that rate will go to the highest level, go from rate 1 to rate 5. And I and my committee and the governor, everybody, didn't want to see that kind of rate shock happen. So in the example I gave you, that particular business had 110 employees, they're taxed on the first $14,000 of each employee, and his rate classification was 3.5 or 3.8%. He had a relatively middle of the road or poor experience rating in terms of having to lay off people. That was going to go to from 3.5 or 8 to 6.5 or 8. So he was going to see a 3% increase as of this July in his unemployed taxes. If this bill does not go into effect, that's what he will see. And we calculated out he will have to pay $42,000 more next year.
And Madam President, if I may just continue, so that's not to just a particularly larger business in Vermont. This is also applicable to,
every single business in the state. As I said, the lowest rate that people pay, and most of our employers are in what is called rate class 0. 45% of our employers are rate class 0. They basically have had no layoffs in the past 3 years. They pay right now presently 0.4%, and their rate would triple to 1.3%. So depending upon the number of employees they have, they can see a 300% increase in their taxes as of July 1st.
Thank you, Madam President.
Senator from Grand Isle is recognized.
Madam President, I'd just like to make a point. I haven't heard from one business that is concerned or questioned about the rate increase. What the word out there is how the availability of employees. This is what they're concerned about. How do they go about hiring employees? If it gets to the point where benefits are equal or greater than the unemployment, that's going to be the problem. They're looking for employees. That's what it's all about. Any calls that you've got or I receive, their question from the businesses isn't what's my rate going to go to? It's we can't hire help. That could be a problem. One other question I'd like to interrogate the chair of Senator from Chittenden, report of the bill.
Yes, without objection. You may interrogate the reporter.
Thank you. You mentioned something about, Senator, about the 5 years benefit would go 5 years. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, why 5 years? If we're dealing with an epidemic during this time now, why not like 3 years to evaluate? Why 5 years out? Seems like a long time to project.
We were trying to achieve some balance in this surplus money going out the door. And if you recall, when we put out our original bill, we put in a 20% increase. There seems to be, especially from the business community and in my conversations with Senator Brock, they seem to be far more concerned with that payment going out. In fact, some of them have now suggested that we extend the benefit, the tax cut even further and make the dependency benefit permanent. So it was more just a question of if we were going to cut back both the benefit, the tax cut, and also the benefit enhancement. We just chose because of the, especially because of the numbers we had on women, we chose to focus and target this enhancement to the dependent benefit.
But that's 5 years with a sunset, you said?
Yes.
Well, there's never going to be a sunset. Let's face it. I've been around long enough to know that sunset never happens. It's always an extension beyond that. It's pretty hard to take away a benefit once you've given it. So it just seems to me like 5 years is a long time to evaluate this. And as far as the sunset, once you receive benefits, it's pretty hard to take them back. So, but I want to go back to one thing again in particular is that the employers are worried about hiring people, and everybody knows there's help needed out there, but don't get it to the point where you have to make a choice whether working or receiving benefits, which one has a greater value. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. Might continue my response, if I may.
Should be.
I'm obliged to move on to the next individual with their hand raised, which I believe was the senator from Chittenden, Senator Pearson.
I'm happy to yield to the presenter.
Senator Sirotkin, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I just, out of courtesy, I just wanted to respond to the senator from Grand Isle, because he did, as part of his question, say that the concern was finding new employees. I just want to make it clear that this added $50 benefit per week goes into effect after the federal $300 disappears. It only goes to about 45% of the households on unemployment benefit. But those households will be having, through the summer, if they're on unemployment, would, let's just use an average beneficiary of $380. They would get $380. The Congress, in its wisdom, added $300 to that check. They will, on September 6th, be facing a cut from $680 to $380, and we would be adding $50 to that to get them to $430. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs? The senator from Bennington, Senator Sears, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I wonder if I could inquire with the report of the bill.
You may.
Madam President, I'm particularly concerned about the idea that the computer system that the Department of Labor uses would not be able to function to provide the benefit that we've discussed, particularly after the fiasco with the Form 1099 for a number of my constituents, and I'm sure yours. We've also seen other glitches come up. Do we have a solution for that problem?
I think we do. One of the things we talked about today was that now the department is going to have another extra 2 months and 1 week in order to prepare for this. So if this bill was signed into law on May 1st, they'd have four months and 1 week to get ready for this. But I think, Senator, I think we need to consider the fact that what we're asking of the department to do here, I mean, if this legislature feels that this is good policy and they say it's impossible to implement, it's a little hard to understand how many things we can do in science and government and all these things. And all we're asking for them is to get out $6,000 people in the first year $50 checks. They can do that separate from their mainframe if they need to. It's not that hard. And in fact, when we started getting deeper into the dependency benefit, we asked them what would they rather do, have us have it do per household or per claimant, and they said, well, do it per claimant, it'll make it easy for us. I haven't heard much pushback in the last few weeks on their inability to do this, but certainly they can continue to make that case in the House, they can continue to make that case, but this is not rocket science for them to do.
Madam President, if I might, the roll call was called on this to accept this amendment, if I'm not incorrect, Madam President.
That's correct.
So if the amendment is defeated, we would then go back to the original bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And may I inquire with the reporter whether he'd prefer to go back to the original bill or the amendment that he's offering today?
Well, let me be clear. Let me be very frank and clear, Madam President. What's in this amendment is an attempt to come to compromise, and it is a less costly bill by far. It's a smaller scope bill by far from what our committee originally voted for. But I am committed to the negotiations I went through and trying to reach compromise. So we would prefer that the amendment pass and not go back to the original bill.
Thank you, Madam President.
The senator from Windsor, Senator Clarkson, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to address the concern that I think people are hearing from the senator from Caledonia. The ARPA money at the moment was not a part of our equation or discussion. It's premature for our committee to have been looking at ARPA money as a solution here. We were playing within the unemployment insurance universe. We are only we only had our first presentation on ARPA and how it's impacting our committee's work. It would have been premature for us to consider ARPA as a solution to any of these issues here. And we were discussing unemployment recipients. And so it is, that was not a world we were discussing at that point. So we're playing within the unemployment insurance world. And the department had said that the point below which they were not willing the threshold point was 90 million, which our chair has already addressed. And even with these benefits extended to employers and to recipients, we do not approach that. So, I mean, we get closer to it, but more will still be coming in. So I think we're absolutely safe at the moment and we are looking at the beginning of April at guidance coming from the governors, from the administration, which will lift some of the restrictions on our hospitality, special events, and performing arts worlds. I am, as everybody else is, eager to see many more of these people go back to work. Remember, these are the sectors still on unemployment primarily, and still heavily, almost 70% still women. And I would just, I would just like to remind us that the sandbox we were playing in is UI. And we have yet to really focus on how we're able to use the other money. I would also despite what we're hearing from many of our colleagues, I think this is a good bill. You know, it balances the needs for business to receive real tax relief. We've worked on making that real tax relief with the needs of Vermonters, especially Vermonters with children. To get some needed support once their federal UI benefits end. I mean, we're only talking post the expiration of these UI benefits. The principles embodied in this bill, principles of helping people and helping our communities, are the principles that form the fabric of why the unemployment insurance system was created. Our UI system is based on a long-held understanding that we are better as a state, our communities are better, and our fellow Vermonters are better when we can provide a transitional boost to people who, through no fault of their own, have lost their jobs. This bill is viewed as an off-ramp into our post-pandemic economy. And this is a better bill. This amendment is better because we've taken time to listen and work with each other. Providing this boost is key to preventing our fellow Vermonters from falling into poverty, which, if they do, would not only create barriers to returning to the workplace, but could have long-lasting negative impacts on the physical, emotional, and mental health of those individuals and their families. This is why our UI system This is what our UI system does. This is why it's been such a powerful anti-poverty program since 1935. It's a piece of our original safety net, and none of us know when we might need it. This is what we in this chamber are sent here to do. This is what we're sent here to do, to help people when they need help the most. Our Constitution anchors this charge in the Common Benefits Clause. Quote, government is or ought to be instituted for the common benefit and is part of why we value balanced solutions as fully as we do in this General Assembly. This is a good bill. It's balanced and it aligns our values. We are fortunate enough to be able to help both businesses and those Vermonters struggling on unemployment to keep their heads above water in these difficult times. I urge the body to support this balanced approach, an approach which aligns with the values of this Senate and our state. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Addison is recognized. Senator Bray.
Thank you, Madam President. May I inquire of the reporter of the bill?
You may. You may.
I think all of us have received comments and heard concerns. And I'd say one of the most fundamental was, well, people are going to they won't want to come back to work because they're going to make more work staying at home. But you've presented an amendment on the floor today. And so I'm wondering if you can address that concern. My impression is you heard that and the amendment addresses that, but it's still being circulated as what the bill would actually do. So can you clarify that, please?
And I can and I will. So when we started the $50 benefit in the original bill on July 1st, pretty much everything in unemployment goes on a fiscal year, and the tax relief we were offering started on July 1st. So we started that on July 1st. People made raised the concerns that you're raising and you've articulated because of, actually is very coincidental. I think the $300 that the federal government added to people's benefits happened on exactly the same day we voted the bill out. So we weren't fully aware, whether that was going to pass, but those benefits go to September 6th. So in hearing people's concerns, we modified our bill to say this benefit wouldn't start until that $300 goes away. So in the example I gave again, people who bridge that Labor Day change will actually see a major cut in their benefits, even with the $50. They'll be getting the $50 if they happen to have a kid at home, but everybody will be losing $300 from their unemployment check.
Thank you very much. I attended a meeting yesterday with maybe a group of 50 contractors, and the major concern I heard expressed was that you would make more money staying away from work than going to work. So I appreciate the committee addressing that and putting that behind us. And I regret that it keeps coming up when it really doesn't reflect the current realities of the bill as proposed. I also want to thank the senator from Orange, because I also heard in yesterday's meeting and elsewhere sort of a disparagement of those who are in the situation of drawing unemployment. And, when I think about where did the money come from in the first place to fund the system, there is no employer without employees. It is the work of those people that makes the money for the business that then funds the system that allows them to lay off when they need to or when a pandemic comes along. So it is unfortunate that we have some people are dividing one group against the other. But I would, in the end, reminded by Senator from Orange's remarks, I think the people who created the fund, in essence, were those who contributed the labor that allowed the companies to participate in the unemployment system to begin with. I don't think we should ever begrudge anyone who carried out the labor of the group to then receive benefits from the organization that they helped fund. So thank you. I look forward to supporting the bill, and I thank the committee for its diligence and further amendments.
The question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs? There's been a motion by the senator from Caledonia, Senator Benning, for a roll call vote. Are you ready for the question? The senator from Windham is recognized.
Madam President, you have someone from a senator from Chittenden who's had her hand up.
The senator from Chittenden. Senator, I'm sorry, I'm unable to see the senator from Chittenden. Senator Rahm is recognized.
Thank you both so much. Thank you, Madam President. So there are a few, I don't want to call them misconceptions, but just sort of, I think, problematic statements that I wanted to address. But I wanted to first start by saying, I recall the member from Franklin County saying that we're a significant outlier in Vermont. And in fact, we're an outlier in more ways than one. Vermont has the highest unemployment rate for women in the country, far and away. We have been asking economists beyond our borders what makes this the case. Many states have childcare issues. Many states have a heavy service industry, but we have a lot of women and families in crisis in Vermont. And that is truly what makes us an outlier, most of all, in this crisis. There was also a little bit of an exchange between two of my colleagues on the committee about the dependent benefit, about how businesses are perceiving this debate. I want to say, I think I don't want to disparage either side's employees or employers. A lot of businesses came to the table and said, we get the dependent benefit. Because in fact, as some folks may or may not remember, our original proposal had a 20% overall bump in unemployment benefits when the federal benefits went away, to recognize that a lot of people will lose the cushion that they've gotten. But we heard over and over again from businesses that we need people to get back to work. And yet the dependent benefit is about recognizing what businesses, and in particularly small businesses where they may have gotten both unemployment support and certain types of business support as well, because there are a lot of people in dual crises. But the dependent benefit recognizes that those folks can't flip a switch and go back to work. Those folks have childcare issues that they have to work out. They have a lot of family needs to take care of. We're not even covering other dependents, like, older family members that they may have that are still feeling the lingering effects of COVID or other illness. So, we're trying to help families in crisis. That doesn't end when the emergency order is lifted. This is a crisis that will have a long tail. Our Treasury Secretary, people around the country have been recognizing that a crisis like this is generational. And we're trying to give a small additional benefit to families so they don't slip deeper into poverty. I also want to appreciate, it was new to me, sort of hearing the member from Caledonia say maybe we could be doing this through appropriations. I would certainly welcome additional conversations, but a lot of the monies that flow unrelated to unemployment, that are for families in deep poverty and crisis, those are significantly means tested. And I know many of us support that we get that money to the people who need it the most. These kinds of programs like unemployment put people right above that level that they might need to be at to qualify for those benefits. So we heard directly from families in crisis that being on unemployment at some level, two-thirds below in some cases, although the federal benefit has increased, a third below, at 2/3 of their former income. Any amount such as that, plus the federal benefit, has put them just above the level for childcare benefits, for healthcare benefits, for other additional supports that they would have otherwise received. And that extra $50 a week is just a little bit to help them get through at the end of the month and make sure they don't slip into deeper crisis. I also want to say, our proposal does more to skim off the top from what businesses are going to eventually owe to replenish the fund than what the governor's original proposal included. And I don't know if that point was underscored enough. We just started with a small amount because this is, I'm coming back into the legislature remembering that while we often want to do more, we need to come back and do our due diligence. And the study that is in this bill might seem irrelevant, but it's really critical. That study lets us know if we can right-size the unemployment fund in a way that shaves hundreds of millions of dollars off of the generous amount we might need to restore the fund. We don't want to be hasty in that decision because we're hearing, for example, in Europe, that cases are going back up with the new variants. We aren't ready to say the crisis is behind us, but we probably by next year will be ready to say, sure, 2020 being our worst year in 10 years would require that we have $1 billion unemployment fund. We probably don't, end up needing that much money. And we can probably come back and make that decision after this study that will be led by the governor's Department of Labor. Speaking of the governor, I also want to say, this is in no way disparaging the governor, but many of us started to look at this calculation with the Department of Labor in our committee. The governor didn't have a chance really to consider this 2020 exclusion. Businesses saw that we were talking about it and realized what kind of financial impact it would have to reduce that overall amount needed significantly. And so we all started talking about this major exclusion that would really help our businesses. We have not heard the administration weigh in on whether or not they support that overall exclusion you all are hearing about in those emails, because it might be premature to say that that big of an exclusion that reduces the amount of the fund almost in half is in order right now when we haven't had time to look at it. So, I just wanted to address some of those points. We would not be an outlier in addition in adding this dependent benefit, because 13 other states have this benefit, including our neighbor Maine. They've had it since the 80s, and they just increased it this year. I wrote a bunch of chicken scratch on a magazine, and I just want to see if there's anything else that I thought was really critical. I just want to remind folks, again, and underscore, we have an unemployment system for almost 100 years because it's something we all agreed would keep our entire country and our entire economy afloat in crises like these. We all agree, we all celebrated when we got into this pandemic that we had an unemployment system. We had a governor ready to hand checks to people at the door. We still need that spirit. We may not, remember what it felt like right at the beginning to think we're all in this together and we need to get out of this together, because we've all kind of started to harm each other with some of the rhetoric. But we are all in this together, and the people most left behind are women and children, and they're going to be in quiet crisis for a long time. They're not going to get that check at the door. They're not going to be remembered in a year, but they're still going to be feeling the effects of this pandemic. And we all want people to be able to get back to work, which frankly, I asked the Department of Labor about in committee today, and it's the reason we didn't do the 20% bump overall. But we also want people to be able to afford to take their kids out to eat and to get some childcare, when it becomes available again. We want people to be able to participate in the economy, not just work in it. And so I find that this really strikes the balance and opens the door to a lot of other potential change that will support both our employers and our workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I think I would like to take the time right now to just make the implicit more explicit. This is clearly the most contentious debate we've had so far this session. And I want to just have us all contemplate why that might be, Madam President. This bill, at its core, is about people. It's about people in our communities. It's about all of those families that we have heard. Madam President, we've lost power.
They can hear it.
The Senate will stand in a brief recess.
We can hear you.
I don't dare go off.
Don't.
It's okay.
We can hear you.
You can hear us.
We've lost all of the lights in the chamber, so please stand by.
You have two computers working.
I've lost, but I haven't lost streaming, but I've lost my.
Okay, brief recess.
Don't leave us on.
No, don't go off.
I will stand in a brief recess, knowing that we are still online.
So I'm going to. Not really awkward.
We should take them.
No. Thank you.
The just for those listening, we do not have cameras or technology sufficiently in the building, so I'm going to recognize the senator from Wyndham.
With a very heavy heart, Madam President, I move to adjourn.
Point of order, Madam President.
The senator from Chittenden, who I am unable to see but can hear sufficiently, is recognized.
Well, perhaps your comment has already answered my point of order. We can see you and we can hear you, but it would seem that the monitor is not working at your end.
Well, in that instance, I am able to see the senators on a smaller version of the screen.
There is only a certain amount of backup time on these batteries. We're operating on batteries.
We've unfortunately lost power in the State House.
We do have a motion on the floor.
We do have a motion on the floor.
I'm going to give a time on Tuesday.
So the senator from Wyndham has made a motion to adjourn until
9:30 Tuesday.
the senator
9:30.
The senator from Wyndham has made a motion to adjourn until 9:30 on Tuesday.
April 30th.
April 3rd.
March 30th. We have okay. The senator from Wyndham has made a motion that, subject to any announcements, the Senate will adjourn until Tuesday, March 30th at 9:30. Are there any urgent announcements? The senator from Caledonia is recognized.
Madam President, Senate institutions will not be meeting this afternoon.
The senator from Bennington, Senator Campion, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Given that I'm told Montpelier is without electricity, therefore our committee assistant is without electricity, I believe that Senate Education, unless you hear from me, we will, in the next 20 minutes, we too will not be meeting this afternoon.
The senator from Wyndham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I will check with our committee assistant and we'll send an email to committee members.
Thank you.
Government operations.
The senator from Caledonia, Senator Kitchell, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate appropriations, in light of 3 o'clock adjournment scheduled, we're just not going to convene this afternoon. So we will not be meeting. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements before we lose power? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. The senator from Wyndham has moved that the Senate adjourn until Tuesday, March 30th at 9:30. Are you ready for the question? And if so, please unmute. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and with deep appreciation for your flexibility, the Senate stands adjourned until Tuesday, March 30th at 9:30.